The creepy reel brings you Before the Window, a custom story. The air felt thick and heavy as I stepped outside the coldness of my apartment. It was a hot and humid night, nothing out of the ordinary considering this place is hell on earth. I glanced around me as I stood in the dimly lit abyss, which, surprisingly during the day, was actually a parking lot. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my second-to-last smoke, flicking the lighter as it briefly illuminated my face in the night and took a soothing drag. My mind wandered on so many things as I exhaled the poison. I believe this is called having a moment. I've been having these more frequently, and through my booze-filled haze, I saw this as a life-altering sign. So I listened and attempted to pay attention to my thoughts. Keyword here is attempted. I wasn't exactly sure what signs I should be looking for. It wasn't as if it was going to be obvious either, and I'm not the best at self-awareness. Who am I kidding? I'm just feeling under the weather tonight. You see, I've always had a string of bad luck, or rather, nothing overly exciting really happened to me. I'm not rich, though sometimes I wish I had that luxury. I don't have a particularly fun or well-paying job either. I'm not married, nor do I have anyone who even considers my existence. I always wanted more, but was never actually sure where and how to obtain it. I just scraped by, floating through life. Though calling it life gave it more credit than it was due. I stumbled in from a long day at work and an even longer night at the bar, spending the equivalent to what I've earned that day on alcohol, which wasn't nearly enough for the feelings I was trying to drown out. For the first time, I met some outstanding people, probably since it wasn't the same bar that I often frequented. I shared my life story with the two patrons who were best friends with the bartender. Lucky me, right? Free drinks after my wallet emptied was a bonus. It turned out they hated the city and life as much as I did. They even went as far as to say we're all just depressed and sometimes life isn't worth living. That these feelings are a disease of the brain. I was in agreement with that. They told me they'll be in touch, but I never actually got their contact information. How stupid. I make a connection for the first time and can't keep it for more than a night. As I walked through the blackened parking lot, I fumbled around for my keys as my head spun and my legs performed the drunken dance to the door. As I approached, I noticed something wedged between the frame and the door itself. I found this odd. I've never seen these being delivered in this forgotten part of town before. It was a newspaper. It appeared used and rolled up as if whoever did so was in a hurry. I grabbed it and threw it on a coffee table as I found my way to the couch and chugged an already open bottle of water before blacking out. I woke up at some ungodly hour with my head pounding. I felt my way around to the bathroom and switched the lights on, the extremely bright fluorescence causing me to squint my eyes for a moment. I popped the more than suggested number of painkillers in my mouth and washed it down with coppery tap water. Throwing my dead weight onto the couch before tilting my head back in exhaustion and closing my eyes, my head began to spin. No sleep for me, I guess. I stared around the room, not wanting to watch TV, and I was still too drunk to go for a walk to grab some fresh air. Looking down, I noticed the crumpled newspaper I brought in earlier. I browsed through it quickly, not really looking for anything specific. Tragedies in the first few pages, then politics, sports, puzzles, and cartoons. The only page I read in its entirety. I forgot how amusing these were. They brought me back to my childhood of more carefree times. After finishing the cartoon section and laughing to myself like a crazy person, I skimmed through the obituary section and noticed an oddly large number of missing persons before stopping under classifieds. In the bottom right of the page was a post for a scientific research study. It read,
"Seeking mentally and physically healthy candidates for a drug study. 1-month contract. All selected candidates will have all expenses paid and awarded $10,000 upon completion. Report to Ezrin Street and 50th Avenue by 10 a.m. tomorrow for interviews."
$10,000? My eyes shot open and my heart raced as I began to feel giddy and excited. I'm not sure why, I wasn't even selected yet. but the prospect of basically hitting the lottery was more joy than I could contain. All expenses paid. This was starting to seem like a dream come true. I decided to pull my best formal attire out of the closet in preparation for the morning. Called my worthless job and left a message telling my manager to kick rocks, and I hope the store burns down. With that kind of money, I could start over somewhere. Maybe this was the universe finally speaking to me. It's finally 8 AM, and I'm ready to be $10,000 richer. I left a check from my landlord, paying a month in advance, secretly hoping I never have to return here. But in the unfortunate chance that I do, I'll at least have a place to stay. I arrive at the intersection at about 9:30 AM. At this point, I'm confident that I'll be sliced up. What's left of my existence will be my organs up for sale on the black market. The intersection was in an industrial part of town. Many of the factories have long since shut down and have outsourced their work overseas. Now the place was ridden with every illegal activity you can imagine. It was a ghost town this early in the morning though, but a little too far from safety for my taste. The sound of tires screeching and cars accelerating startled me from sleep. Glancing out the window, there were 10 vehicles. 9 SUVs and a vintage sedan that screamed wealth parked around me, blocking the intersection in front of me. All of them appeared spotless, as if they just drove off the showroom floor. The resemblance reminiscent of FBI transports. I knew this was my demise. It was too good to be true. Now I'm dead, and no one will ever know. I forced my muscles to get the hell out of there, but I didn't have the courage to turn the engine over. I was frozen solid by fear. The vehicles just sat there, parked, with windows as black as the paint job. I couldn't even make out a silhouette inside. After what felt like an eternity in a stare-down contest, the driver's door of the sedan in the middle of the brigade opened and out came an oddly shaped man, dressed in all black. His gaze fixated on me as he adjusted his jacket and pants. He was tall, lanky, with a neck the length of his head and soulless eyes. It's hard to describe, but he seemed empty. No expression, just a blank, distant look. His posture was sunken in and didn't scream confidence, but his presence was intimidating. After adjusting his attire in a few more seconds of eye contact, he walked with a purposeful stride toward the rear of the vehicle and opened the door, bowing his head as another figure exited. At this point, I'm not sure what I was looking at. It flowed out of the vehicle in almost one motion. A similar shape to the driver, but this thing that barely passes for human was much taller. The cuffs of his pants were a few inches above his ankle, revealing twig-like shins attached to inhuman-sized feet. His frame was so slender, every motion he made looked painful. He stood still for a moment, staring at the ground through aviator sunglasses, then waved his driver off. His sudden singular motion to face me snapped me out of my intrigued but terrified gaze. He was odd, but mesmerizing to observe. His movements seemed like he was performing an elegant dance, like his body was filled with gelatin instead of bones. He fluidly motioned his long, thin arms to his face and removed the sunglasses in one sweeping, water-like motion, and looked up at me. I hadn't noticed it before because he was always looking down, but he donned a full head mask that was skin tight, not a single wrinkle from the fabric anywhere. It was almost the same color as his ghostly pale complexion. There were red splotches on his mask all over. I don't know if that was his blood or someone else's, but I had to leave it now. A thought just occurred to me. With my sudden waking earlier due to their noisy entrance, I had noticed that I was blocked in. I tugged on the door handle of my car, and a maniacal laugh suddenly paused my movements because it was the first sound I've heard since they showed up. I quickly spun my head in his direction and terror filled me. He was gliding towards me. Gliding. He took on a crouched stance, bending at the knees with his legs spread open, his arms flailing about like swirling, dancing snakes. His head wobbled in all directions as his eyes remained closed as if dancing to a solo performance in his head. The sound of the crumpled gravel started to come closer as I watched him slide his feet, one in front of the other, swirling his lower half in all directions as he made his way towards me. I swung the door open as hard as I could and ran, screaming so loud at the sheer horror that was behind me. "Help! Help! Anyone!" I screamed as I reached the opposite end of Ezrin Street. I ran as fast as I could. Pure adrenaline filled me, and my out-of-shape body carried me farther and faster than ever before. It was a weird thought in the moment, but I formulated a new appreciation for life and all its trivial details, even the bad ones. For the first time ever, I wanted to live. I didn't mind the shitty job or the run-down four walls around me that I called home. I didn't mind that no one cared for me. I just wanted to live. Before turning the corner at the end of the street, something compelled me to look in the direction I just escaped from. He was chasing me, following the same ballet and waltz-like motions, but sped up to match the pace of my sprint. I switched my gaze ahead only to notice an object propelling fast towards my head. I felt the sudden coldness of steel for a millisecond before it made contact. The sunlight beaming through the crack in the blinds burned my face, suddenly bringing me to the waking world. I sat on the couch and rubbed my eyes, still feeling hungover from the previous night. I felt awful. My head pounded from the cheap booze and the human position I slept in on a couch fit for a child. I've had some horrible nightmares, but that one will certainly scar me for life. I glanced at the newspaper from the previous night on the coffee table. Something caught my eye. Another universal sign, no doubt. It was an article in the tragedy section, as I like to call it, about recent disappearances and an increase in suicides around the same time frame. I won't read the article, but from what I read, there's a group of scientists performing unconventional methods to cure ailments of the mind. Methods they used were almost medieval, according to some fancy psychiatrist. Things like lobotomy, rare chemical concoctions, and brainwashing. Apparently this discovery was testimony given by a few whack jobs before they offed themselves, so it most likely is crazy talk or some extreme form of schizophrenia. And that's why I don't read the newspaper. Still tired, I threw the paper back on the table, walked to the bathroom and immediately began washing my face in a last-ditch effort to wake up. I grabbed a towel and patted my face dry, revealing my reflection and the terrified look it returned to me. There was writing on my forehead and a substance that wasn't dissolved by the water. It said,
Thank you for participating. $10,000 in car.
My face turned pale as I read the note repeatedly. What? No, this can't be. I ran to the living room and picked up the paper, frantically shuffling through and tearing the paper in the process. There it was. In the classifieds, the same listing for a scientific study. No. I tossed the paper to the floor, grabbed my car keys, and ran out the front door. This isn't real. My car was parked in the same spot as last night, so nothing could have happened. I was afraid of what I'll find in there. As much as I wanted the money, I hoped it wasn't there. I stopped at the rear of the car, staring at the trunk for a few moments as I questioned the gravity of the situation. Had I been a lab rat, brainwashed and drugged by some crazy scientist? At any rate, I had to know. I forced the key into the hole and twisted it to hear the terrifying sound of its unlocking. I dropped to my knees and laughed. I laughed harder than I ever did before. Then, that laughter turned to tears. Tears of fear and worry. There it was. A bag of cold, hard cash with a note inside. It read,
It was a pleasure meeting your acquaintance at the bar. I really do enjoy meeting the lost ones.
I held the note in my hands as tears fell onto it slowly. wetting the words written on the paper, causing the ink to spread. The bartender, the patrons, the men who I thought were relating to my sad existence preyed on my broken mind and my broken life. I looked over at my apartment, the neighborhood, the busy streets. I suppose starting over is still an option. This story is an original creation by me. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe, and share, as new content will be uploaded weekly. To submit a story request or stay up to date on my uploads, follow my subreddit and Twitter. All links in the description below. Thank you, and stay creepy.